I'm going to ask you a question. Let's assume that these arms are our electrodes. One is stationary and one is movable. My question to you, which one is positive and which one is negative? We'll talk about that a little bit later on, but let's get started with it. Let's talk a little bit about E-coat, shunt pliers, and weld-through primer. I have a couple of pieces here. These are E-coated material. E-coat stands for electrodeposition primer. This is put on at the factory. Electrodeposition primer is not a electrically conductive material. And I'll show you how that is. First I want to do is I'm going to isolate the jaws here. I'm just going to use a little electrical tape. I'll explain to you why we do this a little later on, but I just want to show you that the non-conductivity of E-coat. So this here is 0.9, and we have 0.9, so we'll use 1 millimeter. So we have this set per mile. Now, one thing you want to do is you're going to need to clean the area where the electrode tips are going to go. So give me a minute here, I'll get some sandpaper and I'll be right back. You know, a lot of technicians will grind everything off. You don't need to do that. The less corrosion protection you have to remove from your weld site, the better it's going to be. So we're just going to take an area here. So this is where the electrodes are going to touch. Nothing happened. Part of the other problem was that the inside of this wasn't cleaned off, but some manufacturers tell you to leave the E-coat. So what we're going to do is that we're going to use what we call a shunt pliers. These are specially designed for spot welding. What I'm going to do is clean the area here where the shunt pliers are going to go. I'm going to place the shunt pliers right here. And remember that there is no electricity inside there. Remember the question I asked you at the beginning of the presentation is that I said which one was negative and which one was positive. Well, the correct answer, neither is. What it is a continuous loop of electricity. It starts through here, comes through here, goes back around, and it have this loop in here. Aluminum, copper, excellent conductors of electricity. So the electrons are flowing fairly easily through those pieces of metal. When you put a piece of metal in here, it builds up resistance. And once it releases itself in the form of heat, that heat will be about 2,000 degrees. Understand how it works. So I have the metal. I'm going to heat it up. So now it is liquefied at 2,000 degrees. We have what is known as squeeze pressure. That squeeze pressure is going to force all of those liquid together. It turns it off. It's going to hold it for less than a second after it's been welded, to approximately 1 second to maybe 2 seconds, and now we have a solid weld. If you have something there that doesn't allow the electricity to pass through it, nothing will happen. As you remember, when I first put it in there without the shunt clamp, the electricity stopped and the electrical pass did not occur. So by having an electrical path through the shunt pliers, and it creates the path, so now the spot weld here formed, and now we have a spot weld. Now when I do the second weld, why did that occur? Well, here's what happened. The electricity hit here, followed through the metal to the first spot weld. It came out of this spot weld and came back here, formed the circuit, shorted it out, pressure built up, 2,000 degrees, created a spot weld. Now, well, why can't I just use a pair of pliers? Well, let's understand it. First off is that you have a very small area where this is making contact. And if you take a look at these, you have a large area. This is steel, a poor conductor of electricity. This is copper. If you also look at this cable here, it is a huge cable that allows the electricity to flow through it fairly easily. Here, it doesn't flow through. So what we try to do is, we don't want to use regular pliers. I isolate them so they don't act as a shunt. So when you're doing spot welding, the best thing is to do is tape off all the pliers that you're using and use a proper shunt pliers for your first weld. Then the rest of the welds that just have to be using pliers next to them. Again, we don't want to act as a shunt to lose power through it, so we're going to just tape them off. And that's the reason for the tape. These are available through Dent Fix Corporation. Great piece of equipment. Got to have them for your spot welders. Okay, next thing, let's talk about weld-through primer. Some manufacturers don't want you to use weld-through primer. They just want you to leave the E-coat. Some say we want you to use it. So you're going to clean the surface. I'm going to coat the metal here. This is a weld-through primer that has a self-etching characteristics from Ken Automotive. Now, weld-through primer, you don't need to use a shunt clamp, but I'm going to use one just on the safe side. I'm going to let this dry. And the first thing I want to do is I'm going to set the machine, so let me, while it's drying, get the thickness. This is 0.8. 0.8. Make sure this is on the mild steel, and we're going to go up to 1 millimeter. Now, could I have formed a spot weld? Yes, without the shunt pliers, but I had them there. So let's do a peel test, see how we did with it. As you can see, there was just a minor amount of burning around where the primer was. This is 4, so this is at the bottom part of the minimum. If you wanted to do a little bit higher, you can move it up. I gave you an overview of using the squeeze type resistant spot welders. Again, you're not going to learn how to use this piece of equipment in a short little video. It's just a quick overview as you're walking through your shop as an owner or manager to look at the vehicles. You can look at the test, how to do it, make sure we're doing that. Where do you get training? ICAR has a couple classes. They have what is known as the WCS 04, which is our squeeze type resistant spot welder theory class. And now they have a hands-on class that deals with weld bonding, primers, shunt pliers, all of the stuff we talked about here, but it's a hands-on experience. If you can't go that route, a lot of your manufacturers do have programs that can come in and help you, that will teach you how to use their machine and some of the basics of spot welding.